各位同事，咁我哋
Members, we will continue to consider Chapter 1 of the Audit Report number 83, Nano and Advanced Materials Institute. The Deputy Chairman summed up our first discussion in the first session, and now the Deputy Chairman will also take us through parts 2 and 3 of the report together. Thank you. Parts 2 and 3 have to do with project management, so we can consider the two parts together. I can quote some examples first. Table 4. The commencement of projects in the past 5 years. Now, in the past 5 years, it's 47, 49, 51, 53, 54. That's the target. And in the third year, the actual number was fine, but for the other 4 years, the actual number of projects fell short of the target. So we're just talking about facts here, and this the administration did not question the table here. Now, table 6, completed projects. Again, in the past 5 years, say 2019-20, target was 46, the actual was just 40, so only 40 projects could be completed. And it's the same in the next few years. The actual number of completed projects, again, fell short of the target, so it's another fact. On the table 7, delays in project completion. And figures show that about 74% of the projects suffered delays. Well, the administration explained why there was delay. COVID was one of the reasons, and we could accept that because that's the objective fact. Anyway, we don't want to dwell into details in each and every of the figures. For example, no timely submission of review reports, or reports submitted were not considered and approved, and so on. So I won't go into those things. But there's one issue identified, and there's room for improvement. And that is the explanations were not recorded properly for the delays, that is. Now there will be new corporate governance measures, there's a new direction adopted, and then we have a new CEO who's just been imposed not too long ago, and he's working very hard on all these new measures. So can you tell us about the new measures? Can you tell us in specific terms how you're going to make improvement in these areas mentioned? Mr. Andy Fong, CEO. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, the member. Except for 2021 to 22, it's true that the targets were not met in the other years, as shown in the tables. After I assumed the post, the first thing I did was to find out why projects were delayed. And I see it's often to do with communications or the ownership of staff. So that's why on the 3rd of October, we implemented the new measure. If the staff responsible for R&D and also project management and say delivery of materials and so on. So on the 4th of October, we identified to be one of the key reasons. So that's why we try to separate the management functions and the R&D functions. and then I will be personally in charge of progress. So if every week if we see that there's any delay in progress of projects, then we will immediately sound an alert and we will ask for reports. So therefore, we're confident that from the angle of governance and management, we will be able to resolve issues early because as soon as they're identified, they have to be reported, and we've separated the different functions. And so I believe that will help us to address the issue. And as I said, we started doing that in early October. And we see that staff are now more proactive. They know they will have to take responsibility. In the past, perhaps there's no clear delineation of the responsibility. And then starting from October, we're seeing results in the new arrangement. So that's about delivery of projects. And on commencement of projects, each year we will plan the number of projects to be commenced in the following year. And there's mention of platform projects, seed projects, and collaborative projects. So they are all of different natures. So if we will look at why some projects could not commence in the previous year, we've tried to find out the reasons. And we just don't just look at growth, and we will have to ask why there are more platform projects and fewer seed projects, for instance. And so I will be involved in the analysis of projects, and so we make sure that we know what the reasons are for any issues before planning the projects for the following year. And then we could then set targets appropriately. So each quarter, the board of directors and I will review the report to see if progress is or the target is met, and if not, then we would make sure something is done. Thank you, Mr. Andy Fong, for your reply. So you're taking a more pragmatic approach. At least you admit that there's room for improvement. And now I'd like to turn to other issues mentioned in the two parts. Laboratory safety. Now, you said you want to do a better job in supervision, and it's nothing to do with you, it's to do with your predecessor. In any case, I'd like to find out more about the laboratory safety issue. Now, there are 7 laboratories under NAMI, and you do safety review every 2 months, and there's a checklist to follow. So, of course, this is something basic we'll do with such audit. But perhaps given the nature of NAMI, there are many controlled chemicals in laboratories. Which paragraph are you talking about? Para 2.23. So please continue. The audit found something strange. Well, there were inspections, safety inspections, and they found that some forms were filled in advance. So I don't think it's anything to do with the system, but to do with individual staff members. So what can you do to improve the situation there? CO, Mr. Fong? Sorry. COO, Ms. Yu. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the question. NAMI takes laboratory safety very seriously. We have a team responsible for safety inspections. And if there is need for support, we will seek support from the UST. And then every 2 months we do inspections. There are also irregular surprise inspections. The laboratory safety team carries out inspection most stringently. And if they find any non-compliance, they will immediately ask the reference staff members to follow up. Now, we conducted an inspection together with the Audit Commission. Now, the staff member had with him a form. It was not pre-filled as such. Now, maybe the situation is not desirable, but actually what the staff member was doing is with that form, and if he found any issues, he would first identify the issues in accordance with the form, and then he will ask the responsible staff member to take immediate action. Now, it seems that there are many items listed in the form. For example, whether all the chemicals have been checked. Well, that is actually overall form or general form. That means in each laboratory there are certain items, but then the items will differ from laboratory to laboratory. For example, in one laboratory there are 10 chemicals. In another laboratory there are just 3 chemicals. It depends on the kind of R&D work the laboratory carries out. Yes, we see there is room for improvement. Otherwise, it will give a bad impression on others. So we have immediately reminded the staff concerned that they must not cause any misunderstanding. That's very important. So we have immediately updated the form. So each time when a laboratory is inspected, the form applies only to that particular laboratory. So they won't use a general form to check each laboratory. So that's by way of information. Now, the Deputy Chairman mentioned that, and is also mentioned in the report, that there is the audit found something baffling. That is, when the inspection was carried out, the staff members should take the relevant items on the spot, but then these items were ticked beforehand. So can you tell us the story again, because I didn't quite follow what you said just now. Can you tell us exactly what happened, if I may explain further? Now, in a laboratory, there are many items that need to be checked. So say if they look at an item and then they take it on a form, well, actually that's not how they do it. If they check the items and they spot an issue, then they will take the item and write down the issue. That form is just to remind him that in this laboratory there are these issues that he must look out for. And so that's why those items are ticked. But then that is actually not the form that will serve as the report of the inspection. In other words, there is not the intention to pre-fill the form. So can I take it to mean that when the Audit Commission went with you to the laboratory for the inspection, your staff member took out a form, there may be different items on the form, and then for the items already ticked on the form, it's just to remind your colleague that they must check these items. That's why these items are ticked. Is that the case? Yes, I that's the case. Well, but I must admit to that there is not enough communication. That's why there was misunderstanding. Oh, let's say there are 20 items on the form and some items are ticked. And that means the staff member must take note of those items. What about items not ticked? Well, most of the items would have been ticked. It's just to remind the staff member that these are items he must check, because these are the items present in that laboratory. What about the items not ticked? What are they? If he doesn't need to check those items, well, how come the items are on the form? Well, if it's about general cleanliness and so on, these are the items. So if I may ask the question again. Well, there's a form, there are different items, and how comes, and some of the items are ticked, you say is to remind your colleague that he has to check those items, right? So I got that point. But if that's the case, what about the remaining items? If they don't need to be checked, how come they are on the form?
I want to clarify, Chairman. We accept the observation of the Audit Commission. That gives people this impression. We accept that. I have already very seriously reminded the colleagues. When you carry out inspection of a laboratory, you need to use a higher level method, so to speak, whatever the reasons. Just now, I told you the explanation, but the explanation isn't accepted by us either. We agree that we need to make improvements. In other words, the management actually didn't accept this reason. Well, my question was asked based on your answer. The Audit Commission went to the laboratory together with your colleagues to carry out inspections of the laboratory. In the report of the Audit Commission, some items have already been pre-filled. That gives us the impression that even before the laboratory inspection, some items have already been pre-filled or ticked on the form. Just now you said for the ticked items, they aren't really ticked in advance. You use them as an indicator to remind the colleagues of these items. That's why, as you said, you ticked these items. So my question is, for those items that your colleagues didn't have to pay attention to, why are they still on the list? Well, that is a general checklist. Some installations or equipment may not be in the laboratory, hence no need to inspect them. That should be 2 forms. It means the design of the forms is problematic. For Laboratory A, there should be a form for Lab A. For Laboratory B, there should be a form for Lab B. But then you use the same form, however. That's why when the Audit Commission carried out inspections, they thought that you had already pre-filled the form. We admit we do need to make improvements in this regard. We have already very seriously talked to my colleague and reminded them. The checklists for different laboratories need to be different. They need to take into account the facilities, changes in the laboratory, as well as the chemicals in the lab. There need to be different forms. Deputy Chair, I understand you couldn't pay great attention to every single detail in the front line or in the management or the operation of the laboratory. Well, you can simply fill stroke A, stroke B, and so on. So you don't have to really design different forms for different laboratories. It's just about whether you have think how to fill out the form. This would be a better practice. You don't have to really design different forms for different laboratories. Let me put it this way. You sort of stood up. Well, can you explain? The explanation given by Nami, well, we heard that for the first time actually. I've been in the auditing field for a long time. In relation to stock taking or safety inspections, Mr. Edmund Wong, we have a legislative member from the accountancy field. We actually don't accept the practice used by NAMI. We can ask them to present the form as well. They have even take no non-compliance, even before safety inspections, that is the no non-compliance noted. This box was ticked on the form. Well, can you tell us more about that, Professor Nelson Lam? There are two check boxes. For example, one, non-compliance, the other box, no non-compliance. So before we even entered the laboratory, the box for no non-compliance noted had already been ticked. Well, how do you explain that, Ms. Yu? Thank you, Chairman. Well, I don't want to discuss this form or discuss how this form was filled at that time. We admit the explanation isn't quite reasonable. I still told you the explanation because we didn't have the intention to deliberately conduct non-compliance or to do something that is not compliant. I admit to this. I have already tasked my colleagues with making improvements. Professor Nelson Lam. Thank you, Chairman. Another important point is that for paragraph 2.23 and 2.24, as mentioned by Deputy Chair, NAMI agreed with all these paragraphs. This is very important. I've been in the auditing field for 3 decades. We have Mr. Eman Wong with us today. We wouldn't accept a form that has already been pre-filled even before safety inspections. If my colleagues had done this, I would have described the situation like what Deputy Chair has said. That is not compliant, and I would leave the subsequent follow-up to the Institute, to NAMI. We want to go forward with this report with a survey. We don't want to pursue liabilities, but we want to see improvements. How many people are on the lab safety team? Do you have sufficient manpower? Ms. Yu, we have 3 colleagues on the team. 1 senior safety manager and 2 safety managers. Sufficient? Yes, at present sufficient. Moving on to the next item. But I think I have already used up my time. I'll leave it to Ms. Carmen Can. If need be, I'll follow up. Otherwise, I'll pause right here. Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow up on Deputy Chair's point. That is, the form has already been pre-filled before safety inspections. I want to ask, as the Audit Commission said, the forms have been pre-filled before safety inspections. This is serious. That involves 2 matters. 1, integrity. 2, I'm not a lawyer, but it probably involves forgery. Apart from tasking your colleagues with making improvements, what else will you do, Ms. Jenny Yu? Thank you. Whatever the reason or the explanation is, we still need to take a look at the end result. We agree with the observation of the Audit Commission. We have already issued a warning to the supervisor, the colleague concerned. Mr. Eman Wong, I understand that that's the only thing you can do. Well, I need to thank the Audit Commission for the finding that you mentioned. Just now you mentioned the CEO could not provide management guidance for every single detail. Be it the CEO or the board, if this issue hadn't been found out, the board of directors had the fiduciary duty to protect the employees. When this problem is not rectified directly, the board of directors is affected, but I will leave it to Ms. Carmen Can for follow-up anyway. In paragraph 2.21, well, rather 2.12, delay in submitting reports. The reports were overdue for 91 to 366 days, averaging 226 days. What is the reason behind this? Why were reports submitted late? Is that a habit? Ms. Yu, thank you, Chairman. The project management team reminds R&D team to submit quarterly reports. The final reports also need to be submitted. This situation is not ideal. As our CEO has said just now, we will enhance the function of monitoring. We will ensure all these reports will be submitted punctually. In the past, colleagues spent most time on research and development. They didn't work on the same projects. They were working on different projects in parallel. They needed to start a project, and they also needed to file a report. We have a dedicated team to remind our colleagues to provide them with guidance in relation to the submission of the report. They need to submit reports in a timely manner. But in the past, you didn't remind them of submitting the reports in a timely manner. In the past, colleagues were reminded to do so. Despite a deadline, after the deadline, we can still pursue the submission of the report. However, right now, even before the guideline, we provide guidance as to what they should, when they should do, or when they should pursue the report. Mr. Edmund Wong, you mentioned reminding and guiding. Apart from the lexical differences, I don't see any difference. We want to resolve problems. Is there any incentive to encourage colleagues to submit reports in a timely manner? If people in society don't have incentives to make improvements, they won't improve. Apart from guidance, what exactly will you do? Anything concrete you will do? CEO, Mr. Andy Fong, as we mentioned, starting from the 3rd of October, there was a structural change. Project management is now under the purview of the COO, which is then overseen by me. Project management is now under the sales team. So naturally enough, those criteria will not be the same as those under the project administration team. The colleagues are responsible for one project. When there are serious risks, they will make a report in the weekly meetings. So we won't only know the issues afterwards. So tolerance in the past was greater, and we need to keep it in check. I want to ask 2.31. In 2.31, it mentions differences in the information submitted to the Legislative Council and that contained in the report. I'd like to know the reason behind these differences. Who allowed the differences in the information submitted to the Council and that contained in a report or in the internal record? Mr. Ivan Lee, in relation to paragraph 2.31 in the report, as I understand, the information in the report submitted to the Council when one company is involved in more than one project, we take into account the number of projects involved in the company. We use the same standard all along. When one company participates in more than one ongoing project, probably involving different technological areas, when they work with NAMI, they think that will be beneficial to them. So if they participate in more than one ongoing project, this reflects the number of companies involved. After reading the report, however, we agree for the documents submitted to the Legislative Council, we will clearly define we will allow the definition to cover one company participating in more than one ongoing project. That is to reduce misunderstanding. The Legislative Council is a gatekeeper. We monitor the situation. When we didn't have Director of Audit reports, we relied so much on the compilation of internal reports. That's how we got a picture on the operation of the institution. But now I know that it may not be effective enough for the Council to monitor the situation. So I'd like to know whether similar problems have happened to other R&D centers. Mr. Ivan Lee, the foundation for report submission is actually the same across all R&D centers. We'll make it clearer for the definition. That is, all R&D centers will have to comply with the same set of standards. In other words, the standards for different R&D centers will also be aligned. Is that correct? Yes, and that is correct. I now refer to Table 9 and Table 10. They are on page 24 and page 26 of the English report. From 2019 to 2023, for the first 4 years, the actual number fell short of the target numbers. The targets used to range between 10 and 12, however, in 2023, the number of targets was reduced to 5. I want to know why the target was reduced. Mr. Andy Fong, CEO. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for your question. On Table 9, in 2020 to 21, we can see the actual number exceeding the target. We were in the middle of the pandemic. At that time, we needed to produce masks. In 2021 to 2023, there wasn't any scientific basis to calculate the number of projects commenced. So in the past, the target was 10. There wasn't any study. We mainly serve SMEs, as we mentioned. On different grounds, the projects could not be completed. As I mentioned, 2023 to 24, we made reference to the number of contract research projects in the past. In 2022 to 23, the number of actual projects commenced was 6. And in the end, the number in 2023 to 24 was 8. In 2024 to 25, the target would be 8. That is, we made reference to the actual number in 2023 to 24. We didn't set any targets in a systematic manner. There wasn't any systematic mechanism. Why was the target 5? Why was that 10? We needed to seek approval from the board of directors. So in the commercialization or delivery process, we need to make sure our targets were met. Thank you.
Mr. Edmund Wong, I understand what the CEO said. They would make reference to the previous year's actual figure to set the target. It is an approach taken in budgeting as well. But if we are to take this approach, if we are to set next year's target with reference to previous year's actual figure for 2020-21, we had an actual figure of 20, which is why 2021-2022 we should have set a target as 20, but you had a target figure of 10 back then. Why didn't you set the target with reference to the previous year's actual figure? Thank you. Mr. Andy Feng, CEO. Thank you. In 2021, the actual figure was 20 because, as I mentioned earlier, we manufactured a large number of masks during the pandemic. We saw that as a one-off occurrence. It would not be repeated. We therefore set the target as 10 in 2021-22. Thank you. Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you, Chair. When the deputy chairman asked questions, the CEO said something I wanted to recap. They wanted to analyze the reasons for such occurrences so that this won't be repeated in future. I appreciate this approach. I also praise him for thinking that. But I hope it won't be just talk. We should have action. We should have employees, stakeholders, and the government agree to this. Otherwise, it would just be talk, and we would just see the repeated occurrences of prevailed checklists. And let me say this, it is for your benefit as well, what the Audit Commission found. Because once problems are identified, such as those for prevailed checklists, you can't really shirk that responsibility in future. So with the prevailed checklists, when such problems are identified, this issue is serious. We should not have prevailed checklists because it will lead to serious consequences. I have no other questions, Chair. Thank you. Ms. Kamen Khan. Thank you, Chair. I thank Deputy Chairman and Mr. Edmund Wong for asking questions. I will not repeat their questions. I want to look at the organization chart. In Appendix A, the CEO said early October the organization chart was changed, and the organization chart in Appendix A is that of 30th of June 2024. Can the CEO talk about what changes were made to the organization chart? In response to Part 3's issues, what changes were made to the organization structure so that there will be better governance in future? Thank you. CEO, Mr. Andy Feng, Appendix A, for your reference. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. As I said earlier, the project administration team was under the Chief Commercial Officer in this organization chart. This organization chart is before the changes were made, and then this project administration team was moved under Chief Operating Officer. The team is no longer under the Chief Commercial Officer's purview. A change was made after I was made CEO. Chief Operating Officer is responsible for operations in the Institute, and every week, as I said earlier, we would hold meetings to review any delays or risks. If the light is red, that is, there is high risk, we have to review the relevant issues. So as I said earlier, the project administration team has been moved to the scope of chief operating officer's work. Right, so there are 3 chief officers: chief technology officer, chief commercial officer, and chief operating officer. Since October, chief operating officer is responsible for overseeing the project administration team. So not only is the chief operating officer responsible for, say, marketing and administration, it is also responsible for the project administration team. All right, so now going back to part 2. I want to talk about the laboratory safety inspections in 2.24. As the 2 colleagues mentioned and the audit commission said, the director audit actually said the box for no non-compliance noted was checked. I believe at the time the team was not under the chief operating officer. So when you look at the management culture, and I also want to refer to paragraph 2.26 because I want to mention the relevant facts. In 2.26, the Audit Commission found that in the 120 laboratory safety inspections, 62 inspections, that is 52% of the total number of inspections, 1 or more non-compliances were found. And remedial actions are supposed to be taken. The Audit Commission then reviewed the inspection reports of the 62 inspections with non-compliances found. 24% of the inspections, that is 15 inspections, there was no documentary evidence showing that remedial actions had been taken. In paragraph 2.28, the Audit Commission noted that in the laboratory safety inspection reports, there was supposed to be senior management personnel signing on the inspection reports, and there should be approval and reviews of the reports by the directors of research and development. So the names are different: the directors of research and development and the relevant senior management. I'm not sure if they refer to the same group of people. Do you have adequate checks and balances so that there are multi-level reviews of the process? Why did these issues occur in the first place? Thank you. Mr. Andy Fong, I would like to clarify 2 things. For the responsibility of projects commenced and completed, it is the project administration team's responsibility. Before, the team was under the chief commercial officer. As for what the member mentioned about the lab safety operations, the responsibility is still under the chief operating officer. We want to separate the commercial aspect of things and the operation aspect of things. As I said earlier, we attach great importance to resolving the issues identified. We want to make sure the training and is provided and the labs know what to do, and we are planning to provide retraining soon. Thank you. Ms. Carmen Khan, I think the response is unclear because from the organization chart, if we are referring to the lab safety team, has it always been under the chief operating officer? That is, the lab safety team was not transferred from another officer's scope of work to the chief operating officer. Correct. Indeed. The only change that was made was for the project administration team to be responsible by chief operating officer. So the inadequacies identified in paragraphs 2.24, 2.26, and 2.28 would not be resolved by the organizational change. You have warned the relevant colleague. What did the management personnel do? Or as the CEO, how will you follow up on this issue? Thank you. Is it going to be the CEO or the COO who is going to answer that question? Yes, Miss Yu. Well, for lab safety, as I said earlier, we have already updated the checklist. We know what to do now and what inspections are supposed to consist. With the inspection reports, we will make sure that the relevant director, that is the director who knows about what the laboratories do, we would require signing by the director, and there should be a written confirmation. The Audit Commission made a recommendation because they have observed that there was no director of research or development signing the report reviewing the inspection reports. We do note the recommendation. We need the relevant colleagues to note what has to be improved with the relevant laboratories, and we would have the directors of research and development review the inspection reports. Because they are responsible for R&D, they need to be responsible for the lab safety as well. The lab safety team will need to report to me for a particular month if any issues are identified, or if there were any incidents or training that has been provided. There has to be a detailed report on these aspects made to me. Thank you. Ms. Carmen Khan, what is going to happen if there is non-compliance? Is there any punishment in accordance with the corporate governance manual? If not, is it the case that the chief operating officer will make a decision as to whether there are full statements? Would there be a written warning? Would the board of directors know about these? Thank you. Who is going to answer this question? The COO, Ms. Yu, is going to answer the question. Well, with human resources management, if there is an employee who made a mistake, there will be disciplinary action. It may be a written warning, or if it is more serious, we will issue a written warning. If it is less serious, it is a verbal warning. If it is even more serious, we may ask them to leave. We have seen these punishment made before. Thank you. Well, I want to ask the board representative if the board has agreed that this is the approach to be taken. Thank you. Professor Cheng. For the quarterly meetings of the board, we will review the reports submitted, and I believe the Financial Administration Committee will review the relevant actions, and the report will be submitted to the board afterwards. We will not be able to see who has to leave in response to a disciplinary action, who is fired. Right, so there isn't going to be a paper that is submitted to the board, right? Ms. Carmen Khan, well, I would like to express concern about the oversight of the board, whether it would require the board's approval to be taking this approach, and if something happens, who is going to make a report, and who is the reporting authority? I want to ask about Table 4. For ITF funding projects, according to 1.16, there are 4 categories of ITF funded projects. Why is it that in Table 4, we only list out the collaborative projects, seed projects, and PSTS projects? Well, for Table 4 and 5, who is going to answer this question? Mr. Lee, excuse me. I didn't really understand clearly what Ms. Carmen Khan asked. Perhaps Ms. Carmen Khan, you can repeat your question. In Table 5, you can only see 3 of the categories of the ITF-funded projects: collaborative projects, seed projects, and PSTS projects. So there is no comprehensive perspective on how many of the ITF-funded projects have commenced and completed. And in fact, as I said earlier, the completed projects, there is the same approach taken. Why is that? Indeed, for Table 5, it does not include all of the categories under ITF-funded projects. The category that was not included was platform projects. For the past 3 years, the target is 10, 10, 15, and 16. And the actual figures were 12, 15, and 16. For all of the 3 years, the targets have been met. And if we count the seed projects, collaborative projects, and PSTS projects, basically it would cover all of the ITF-funded projects. Thank you. Ms. Carmen Khan, how about the target for 2024-25 in relation to Table 4? Mr. Ivan Lee. Table 4 in page 15 of the English version. Well, we can provide additional information in future for 2024-25 because the audit report only goes up to 2023-24. Right, you can provide such information after the meeting. Ms. Carmen Khan, I do not agree that this is outside the scope of the report because in Table 9 they have already talked about making reference to previous year's actual figures to set next year's target. So we need to look at the trend to see whether they are actually setting the target with reference to the previous year's actual figure. And for contract research projects, they are different from ITF-funded projects. How did you set the targets for ITF-funded projects? Perhaps you can provide a reply after the meeting. And I want to ask if the board and the ITC have taken part in the setting of such. Thank you. Mr. Ivan Lee. Regarding whether ITC participated in the process, let me say this. With target setting, it goes through several levels. It would be discussed in the relevant committee and then the board. And we had a representative of the ITC at the board's meetings. In the end, the ITC would approve the relevant figures. They would explain fluctuations in the figures. So this is just a general explanation. As for what I just found for 2024-25, the annual target for platform projects, it's 17, the target. Compared to 2023-24, it is 2 higher. For collaborative projects, it's 14, the target figure. Compared to 2023-24, it's 4 more. As for C projects, the target is 15. Compared to 2023-24 target, it is 2 higher. So you can see that for these 3 categories of projects, NAMI in 2024-25 has set a higher target. Thank you. Ms. Khan. Well, with what Mr. Ivan Lee said, it is different from the figures in Table 5 because in 2023-24, the target was 18. And for seed projects, the target is 15. Can you refer to table 5 on page 16 in the English version? For 2023-24, the target is said to be 18, but right now Mr. Lee said the target in 2023-24 was 14. Will Mrs. Chen clarify this? Thank you. Let me say this.
It's true, the target in 2023-24 is the same as that in table 5. Because I have the 23-24 annual plan with me, that's the original target. And then the commissioner mentioned the target in 24-25 is also correct, because it's based on the 24-25 annual plan. If you don't mind, let me repeat the figures again. 23-24 platform projects. That's platform projects. Okay, the target was 16. 24-25, the target is 17. Collaborative projects, 23-24, target was 18. And 24-25, target is 14. Seed projects, 23-24, target 15. 24-25, target is also 15 for seed projects. Thank you. So if I may ask about the small prints under table 5C and para 2.25 now and para 2.5. Now from the audit found that from board meetings or committee meetings, it seems that the target were discussed at meetings. And then from the board meeting records and committee meeting records, that there were no discussions recorded. Why is that? Professor Zhang? Yes, we did discuss that, because we have 4 board meetings a year, and we will look at whether targets are met for different projects. Well, it's not recorded clearly in the meeting records, though. That's where we're not doing well enough, and we will certainly improve on that. But definitely we had discussions. Ms. Khan, board meeting minutes, does the chairperson have to confirm and sign the minutes as is the usual practice? Yes, we need to confirm the minutes and sign it. Thank you. Ms. Khan, that's all for me on part 2. Mr. Michael Look. Thank you. Well, I left the room because of business engagement. If I'm repeating any points, please do remind me. First, about contract research project management, 2.16 onwards. Table 9. The target was 12, 10, 10, and so on for 2019 to 20, 2020 to 21, 2021 to 22, and then 2022 to 23. The actual was 6, and then 2021, 22, the actual was 8 so the targets were not met. So, and then in 2030, 23 to 25, the target was substantially reduced to 5, and then the target was met because the actual number was 8. So, my question is, how do you set KPIs? How do you set targets? Now, just now, Commissioner said the targets are set first by the reference committee, and then the board will consider them. The audit commission said there's need to set more aggressive targets. This question was asked. Definitely. It's exactly the same question asked. Okay, sorry then. Table 10 was, were there questions on table 10? Please tell us your question. Table 10 is a similar issue. The target was suddenly reduced. And of course then the target was met. So again, looking forward, how can you set more aggressive targets to follow up on the recommendation of the audit? Table 10. Mr. Andy Fong, sorry. Thank you for the question. Well, yes, this issue is similar. For each target, we look whether it's on the income level, the number of projects, and whether it's a platform or seed project. We will look at previous year's performance. We'll look at technological advancement to see what types of projects we need. And then seed projects means there is not yet a partner in the market, so we need to pay for it. And as for collaborative project or contract research sort project, the industry pays for it. So we have to decide which projects are related to our goal, and we have to consider our strengths. Our strength is in low carbon and battery. And then we have to look at the economic situation, and then the team, including the CEO, will have to keep tab of developments around the world. We need to see what the new direction is, and definitely we need to tie in with the development of the country and Hong Kong. So that's why we need to be forward-looking, and we need to have all these figures and information. So for each project or each types or the total number of projects, we have to make sure that they are aligned with the national policy and so on. And so for these reasons, we will set the target. Thank you. Mr. Look, well, in future, when you set the targets, you have to be proactive. At the same time, you need to be pragmatic. If you set large KPI that's not achievable, well, that's no point. Can you set a floor as well as a ceiling that with a slightly high target with it? So you set a basic target, and then you set high quality target. Professor Sun, I totally agree with the member. I also support what Nami said in response. Well, setting targets never easy, because if you set targets, you need to achieve them. Now, under the leadership of the new CEO, I hope Nami will have close communication with ITC. So when Nami sets its annual targets, it must support the key KPIs set by the government, because the KPIs don't represent everything. So when NAMI sets its own targets, it must be pragmatic. As Mr. Michael Loke pointed out, you can't set targets that are too high, but you can't set targets that are too low either. So I hope the new CEO will do a better job here. 2.33. Reduction number of researchers engaged under Research Talent Hub decreased. There's a generally declining trend, and that's a decrease of 90% in 29% in 2020 to 21, up to 2023 to 24. But then there is no specific reason why there is this decrease. So have you now identified the reason, Audit? And how can you encourage the recruitment of researchers? Because I'm a bit worried that maybe the system or the criteria are too rigid. That's why NAMI is not able to identify suitable staff. Maybe you have certain university or academic qualifications that are set too high. What is your question for the Audit Commission? I want to ask if the Audit Commission has found a reason for that. Professor Lam? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Loke. 2.34. Together with NAMI, we discussed the issue. It's stated there. But then we wouldn't venture other reasons, because I'm not an expert in the field. And anyway, we represent public expectations, so we look at the matter from the point of view of auditing. So perhaps we should leave the question to Nami. Professor Sun? Research talents. Well, the number should tally with the number of projects, because when a project is commenced, usually there are about 4 researchers involved. In the past year, NAMI has not commenced many new projects. So of course then it has a smaller share to apply for talents under the Research Talent Hub. So the number of projects is relevant. We see there is a smaller number of researchers. That means that they have fewer new projects. And that's exactly the issue of concern to members mentioned earlier. So that's how I will respond to this question. Now, in the coming year, when they have more projects, then they will have more quotas under the Research Talent Hub. Let's look. On open recruitment of researchers, what are the usual criteria? Commissioner, Mr. Ivan Lee. Let me tell you about the framework. As for the actual operation, maybe NAMI could supplement. Now, as the Secretary mentioned, when we start a new subvented project, then we allow NAMI to hire 4 researchers during the project period. And these have to be researchers with STEM-related qualifications. They can be bachelors, masters, or doctors. And then there will be a subsidy for the monthly salary. But then we'll leave it to NAMI to decide what sort of researchers they need. So we just set the framework, and then the actual execution is up to NAMI. Ms. Jenny Yu, COO. We don't just hire researchers through the Research Talent Hub. We will set aside funds under each project for hiring the research team. And of course, the government has the initiative to encourage us to hire more researchers. But then it doesn't mean that we are hiring fewer researchers. It's really project-based, as the Secretary pointed out. It depends on how many projects we have commenced, and we'll see how much manpower we need for each project. Now, we need to plan that very carefully. And then there are certain conditions for each research team. So then we'll see if the researchers we hire meet the requirements before we include them in the Talent Hub, because there have to be certain requirements. So what I want to say is that we have done much in talent training, and each post is filled through open recruitment, and we will recruit talents from local, mainland, and overseas universities and other places. Thank you, Mr. Loke. That's all I'd like to say for this part. Deputy Chairman, we still have 6 minutes, and then we'll have to wrap up the meeting. Mr. Louis Long and Ms. Carmen Can on the queue. So do you want to speak now, or shall we leave it to the next meeting? It's up to you, Chairman. What if I extend the meeting by 15 minutes? Can we then complete parts 2 and 3? If not, then well, let's start at the next meeting, okay? Thank you all who attended the meeting. I thank the Audit Commission too. We will schedule another hearing and we'll inform you. So we haven't finished parts 2 and 3, and we will continue a discussion at the next meeting. Thank you.